Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. My name is Dottie Jordan. I'm the Executive Director here at Mount Kisco Child Care Center. We're very happy to have you. It's my pleasure to introduce Peter Harckham, Westchester County Legislator. He's a man who has worked tirelessly on behalf of children and families in Westchester County. Peter?
Thank you, Dottie, and thank you for hosting us here today. I'll just give you a brief rundown of what we're going to do today. We're going to be talking about the increase in parent share for child care. I'll give you a brief overview from the legislative perspective. Then Dottie and Polly Peace from the Country Children's Center will talk about the impact on their centers. We'll have two parents who have children in each of those centers. We'll then turn to two board members, Clark Robson and Tom Coleman, who will again talk about the fiscal impact on their operations, and then we'll open it up for questions. I'm reminded of the old saying, here we go again. We were here at this very location 3 years ago when this county executive first came into office and increased the parent share. It was wrong then, it's wrong now. We're talking about the working poor here, folks who are working hard to contribute to the economy. They want to work, they want to contribute. And we know from past experience that when they lose access to adequate, affordable child care, they make a choice, either put their child in unsafe, unlicensed daycare, or they give up work. This has profound economic implications. It has tax implications. You know, when the county executive did it the first year, you can say it was a misguided budget choice. 2 years in a row, it then becomes a very, very concerning policy choice. And now we're on year 3 of increasing the parent share, and this is a concerted war on child care. That's all we can say it is. These increases are unjust, they're unwarranted, and they're unwise. Let's go to the first chart. This is where we are right now. This is what we put in the budget. The Board of Legislators put 20% family share in. That's $178 a month. The county executive vetoed that part of the budget, and the Board of Legislators overrode it. That is the law of the land. That's the way the charter works. That's checks and balances. $178. Now, going up to 35%, it'll be $311. Those families are not seeing an increase in their income. So we're going up about $1,600 a year. Golf went up $2 a round. So let's talk about where this county's priorities are. Golf went up $2 a round. Child care is going up $1,600 a year for a family who can least afford it. Let's go to the next chart. Let's look at where child care has been over the last 4 years in terms of the parent share. In 2009, a family averaged $86 for child care. We're now going up to $311. That's over a 300% increase. It's about a 360% increase. Have their wages gone up 360% that they can afford to absorb this? I don't think so. It's an unwarranted increase because we have a surplus in the Department of Social Services. The budget director of Westchester County, Larry Soule, in his second quarter forecast, was forecasting a $7 million surplus in the Department of Social Services. Without coming to the Board of Legislators, the county executive could simply transfer that money over to cover any anticipated shortfall. Further, they have not adequately documented that there is a shortfall. But even, let's take them at their word that there is, we could be shifting over from the existing surplus in 2012 to cover that. And it's an unwise cut, and it's unwise for several levels. The county executive will say it's a non-mandated service. But what it does is an investment that prevents other mandated services, because we know, as we said before, people face a choice: adequate, affordable child care, or they go off and they quit their jobs to be home with their children. What does that mean? It means food stamps. It means welfare. It means aid to families. It means shelter costs. Those are all mandated costs to the taxpayers. You know, we had a homeless crisis in this county over a decade ago. If you remember, we were housing families in hotels at a great expense. And there was a concerted bipartisan effort. What do we do to reduce the homeless population? We did things like job training, affordable housing, and one of the centerpieces of that, in a bipartisan fashion, going back to the O'Rourke years, was adequate child care. If you remember the 1996 Welfare to Work Act, Bill Clinton and then Speaker Gingrich, adequate, affordable child care was the centerpiece of getting the working poor on that step up to the middle class. People say, well, why didn't you compromise? We did compromise. The Board of Legislators wanted 15%. The county executive wanted 35%. We compromised at 20%. During the budget hearings, we had over 2,000 people come to 3 budget hearings to talk about different aspects of the budget. The one thing we heard loudly and clearly was that parents could not afford a 35% parent share. That's why we kept it at 20%. Parents cannot afford it. As we said, over the last 4 years, the cost to families has gone up over 360%. And I ask you, has their income gone up anywhere near that? And the answer is clearly no. So today I'm here to say that we in the Board of Legislators are back in court today. We're fighting this. This is unjust, it's unwise, and it's unwarranted. And with that, I would like to introduce Dottie Jordan.
Hi. Before I begin, I really want to thank Kathy Hallis, who is the Executive Director of the Child Care Council of Westchester, for being here today and lending her support. Also, you were great at the moving the slides. Oh. Mount Kisco Child Care Center serves 160 children, ages 3 months of age to 11 years. For over 40 years, our mission has been to provide a high-quality early care and education program to children of working families in safe and healthy environment. These children reflect the diversity community here in Westchester County. Over half of our families need some form of tuition assistance, and 25% of those families depend on county subsidy. 45 children at Mount Kisco Child Care Center come from families of single-parent households, and these parents rely on safe and dependable child care while they work. The decision to increase the parent share from 20% to 35% will force many of these families to drop out of child care. In addition, the fact that they have frozen funding for low-income families means less children will attend high-quality programs. They could not be here today, these families, to speak, with the exception of one, Wendy, who will come to speak to you. So I'm here to speak on their behalf and to really describe to you who these people are. They are grocery store workers. They work at the medical group and the hospital. They work for the village and towns in Westchester County. They're child care workers. They also work in restaurants and dry cleaners and even in your homes. These parents keep our towns and county strong. Mount Kisco Child Care Center relies on multiple sources of funding to operate our programs, and in the last 2 years, we've seen a drastic cut in government support. Our scholarship program increased 30% over the last 2 years. The center cannot sustain these increases without government support. The short-sighted decisions today will leave terrible long-term consequences for our county. Westchester County needs early care and education programs to prepare children for the future. The lack of investment for our children will impact their success in the future. Our families deserve our support. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, and here's Wendy. Wendy Urbina is a parent and a child care worker here at Mount Kisco Child Care Center.
Hi, and as a single parent, the county subsidized had allowed me to be able to work and provide things for my daughter. She needs food, clothing, so the increase is going to make it hard for me. I'm barely making ends meet now. I'm an employee at Mount Kisco Child Care Center, and I have spoken to many other parents who get county subsidized, and they are all worried that they will not be able to afford the increase and will have to take their child out of the center and lose their jobs. Without child care, we will have to leave our jobs and may have to get other assistance from welfare and also food stamps. It is important to me to work and make a contribution to the community. I am not looking for a handout, I'm looking for a hand up. So please, help us out. Thank you.
And now we'd like to introduce Polly Peace from the Country Children's Center.
Thank you, Dottie, for hosting this event, and thank you, Pete, for always being such an advocate for all of us and for helping us to bring a voice to the current situation vis-a-vis county subsidies for the working poor. I'm the director of the Country Children's Center, and I have been enjoying that role for the past 26 years. When I started my work at the center, it was the beginning of what was termed the decade of the child. And there was an atmosphere of hope and promise for the children in our communities. I shudder to think of how our current decade will be characterized regarding children when we look back at some of the decisions we're making. The Country Children's Center has programs in D-Katonah, Bedford Hills, Yorktown, all affluent communities. However, don't be misled by that fact. Within each of these communities, there are pockets of families who are desperately seeking a way out of poverty and trying hard to do what we all tried to do, to provide a good and secure life for ourselves. Every day, the doorbell rings at our office in Bedford Hills with a new family looking for care for their children and help with paying for that care through a county subsidy, which we can provide, provided there is funding for that. The families who come to our door are not looking, as Wendy said, for a handout. They're motivated, working people who happen to have young children that need to be cared for while they're outside of the home. Largely, they are single mothers with no one at home and no place to turn to for help for the child care. If the cuts remain, I see two things happening. One, parents will not be able to afford the care, and they'll have to move away from the county altogether or stop working. Economically, this affects all of us because jobs bring revenue. That's what we hear. It's on the federal stage right now. And a loss in jobs removes revenue from the system, and immediately in rent, in groceries, in gas, public transportation, and other areas. Or two, parents will continue to work, and if they do, they'll find unregulated and sometimes unsafe, poor quality care for their children. This also has a price tag for all of us. These children will not be developing in a vacuum. They will grow, and they will enter the public school system. And when they do, there will be a lot of expensive remedial programs and services that will have to be put in place for them in order to bring them up to par, so that all of the children are not held back. So we pay now or we pay later. The current climate seems to be very short-sighted, in my opinion, and not in the best interest of any of us. I have with me today one of the parents from our center, the Country Children's Center, a single mom who has had her child in our center since he was an infant. She's currently receiving a subsidy to help her with the cost of care. I think her story can help you to understand the personal and real trauma that these cuts are causing to families in Westchester. So I'd like to introduce Larissa Laguna.
Hi, as Polly mentioned, I have an 8-year-old son who is currently attending the Country Children's Center after-school program. And I think what many people fail to realize is that these cuts, the freezing of the subsidies, and the increase in the parent share not only affect infant to pre-K quality daycares, it also affects before and after school programs, summer camp programs, and kindergarten wraparound programs. Without the subsidies, my son would not be able to attend a quality daycare center like the Country Children's Center because frankly I wouldn't be able to afford the tuition. He's able to go to an after-school program where I know he's safe and he's well taken care of. The programs are licensed, the teachers are all qualified. Without these programs, parents, as Polly and Dottie mentioned, would probably have to put their children somewhere where they're not safe, where it may not be stable, where the child care provider may not be responsible, trained, licensed, accredited, or even well-educated. And I think that an increase from a 20 to 35% parent fee is devastating, not only for the families who, like myself and like Wendy, who are in a very strict budget and limited income, but it also affects the community. And as Polly mentioned, if we can't work, we're not providing or giving back to our community. So it affects employment, it affects your community. It affects, as a consumer, it'll affect where you shop, how you shop. It affects everybody. It's a trickle-down effect. And I think that what the county and people need to realize, the higher-ups need to realize, as Wendy mentioned, we want a hand up. We want to be able to contribute to society, to pay our taxes, to work, to continue to be motivated, and most importantly, to provide for our children. Every parent wants better for their child than they had growing up. And without quality daycare, children are not ready once they go into kindergarten. I can honestly say that with the Country Children's Center, when my son started kindergarten, he was ready. He knew his numbers, he knew his letters, he knew how to write. Without quality daycare, if children are at home with family members, they don't always get that. So I think that you have to realize that, like I mentioned, it not only affects infant through pre-K, it also affects school-age children, it affects summer camps, and it affects the community as a whole. So I think the county and the legislators really need to consider how it affects everybody as a whole and as society as a whole.
And now to speak from the board perspective of these organizations, Clark Robson and Tom Coleman.
Good morning. Over the past several years, the county aid to the Mount Kisco Child Care Center has been cut by roughly 50%. This is money that we have depended upon, and this last year, to a large extent, as a result of these cuts, we had a significant deficit and are faced with a deficit again this year. With further cuts in the county aid over the next several years, we don't really know what we're going to do. We desperately don't want to reduce the quality of care. We have a real dilemma, and we need help from the county. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Tom Coleman. I am first a parent with two working wife and husband. And when we moved to this area, we felt strongly, obviously, we needed good child care, and part of that was we wanted a diverse child care. And Mount Kisco Child Care offered that, and the only reason, or a main reason that can happen is because of subsidies to allow the diversity to be here. And I am now on the board of the child care as secretary, and for the last really the last 4 years, it has been very challenging, as Clark mentioned, to achieve the budgets that we need. And in fact, it is because of this issue largely that this jump from 86 to over nearly 400% in the amount that these working families can try to contribute, need to have to contribute to achieve this. So please help us try to achieve our goals of reinstating a more reasonable amount that we can expect from these families that are trying to make ends meet.
Thank you, everyone.